Hello and welcome to Sam's Table. I'm Sam Black, joined today by Noah Mickel to discuss organizing and running events and building local communities and non-sanctioned unofficial play networks and all that stuff. Ordinarily, this my content in general and this podcast included in that leans more toward strategic insight, which is something that I'm more known for and expect that my audience is generally looking for. But my idea with this podcast was to kind of leave the branding and identity a little bit more open ended to discuss and explore, just talking about all the different ways that I enjoy playing Magic. And I have been primarily enjoying playing paper Magic in person with friends almost exclusively. And Noah, as a local organizer of a variety of cube and pre-modern events, has been a significant contributor to opportunities to do that, which I greatly appreciate. I've played in
Thanks, Sam.
a number of his events and have enjoyed doing so. And I think that Noah is something of an expert on building these kinds of communities and events and getting the word out and working with local businesses to find space and run cool stuff. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to discuss some of his ongoing projects as well as approach to things and maybe help other people think about what would be involved in growing their local scenes if that's something they're looking to do.
Happy to help, Sam.
So, yeah, with that said, this full disclosure is a little bit awkward for both of us because we just got about 10 minutes into recording an episode and I realized that due to a technical error on my part, my audio wasn't being recorded. So we are going to power through repeating ourselves to each other and have a bit of a strange conversation that might be a little bit rushed through the part that we just talked about. Apologies for that. It is what it is. So, yeah. How about
Yeah,
you take it from here?
so I guess first, hi, I'm Noah Mickel. I'm a community organizer of unsanctioned Magic the Gathering tournaments in the Madison, Wisconsin area. I guess I primarily run, when I say unsanctioned, I mean both format and as in not associated with a store. I primarily run events around the Cube and pre-modern formats. I have helped organize CubeCon in the past. I run a couple of mid-sized cube events every year, including a cube house party at my year every cube house party at my house every year called Cube Dungeon Con, and then I run a monthly and weekly tournament series for pre-modern.
Yeah, a lot of different cool stuff. So I think from here, let's talk about, since it's timely and useful to promote, let's talk about the pre-modern weekly and monthly tournament series that are kind of, I'd say, just kicking off.
Yeah, so we just had our second monthly tournament series here in Madison. This is the Mog Squad tournament series because that's the name of kind of our South Wisconsin crew. And these are monthly events that lead up to a yearly invitational where the winner takes home a playset of every original Onslaught fetch land, as well as we're working with some pre-modern artists to potentially make a cool mat for the champion at the end of the series. The events like run up to 32 people and like I mentioned before are kind of very community oriented and run out of a bar instead of at a local game store, which comes with its own challenges but also has the joy of having a lot of fantastic like beverages on offer for everybody and is a fun environment to play Magic right next to a tanker full of beer.
And it's worth elaborating on that a little bit. We actually play in the back room in a brewery. And so when you're playing, sometimes you'll just kind of hear the machines gurgling away. And it's like, you're playing in some weird, like, mad scientist lab or something.
Yeah, the and to give am I allowed to give free promo?
Yeah, of
to
course.
the venue. So Delta Beer Lab is an award-winning brewery out here, and they've been really great event partners. Turns out, if you ask nicely and you treat the space well, they're more than happy to have you keep coming back and back. So we have the monthly tournament series, and then we started weekly events primarily as a way to just hang out and get more games of Paper Pre-Modern in, as well as have an opportunity for folks to hang out in the middle of their week, since I in particularly work a high stress IT job in during the day, and so having pre-modern to look forward to early in the middle of the week is really nice.
Yeah. So as far as like getting the word out about this stuff, some of our lost tape included discussion about changing landscapes with Magic and social media in general in terms of reaching everyone and making sure that everybody knows what's happening. I talked about the not mass, but like some amount of like departure from Facebook and then Twitter, where, a decade ago, basically everyone who is actively playing Magic, I think, was using Facebook. And then more recently, everyone was using Twitter. And those were like good ways to announce and coordinate events and stuff. And now I think those are a little bit less reliable. More people are using Discord. And then, everyone's in 10 to 100 different discords and is not necessarily even going to notice all of the events and notifications and stuff in discords they are in, let alone not everyone's going to be in every discord, even locally, or people won't even know about local discords for formats they're in and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Plus, like the Twitter split when people left for
yeah.
Blue Sky, and there's a lot more fragmentation now than there maybe was a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly a lot of different reasons for that, and this, the focus isn't so much like what happened with the social media landscape, but more kind of what do we do about that as independent event organizers, and how do you make sure that when you're trying to build something that people know about it?
So
And yeah, hop in.
yeah, so there's a few different things that like immediately come to mind. So like you said, it's really hard to track, like get to everybody online. And so a lot more of my event running these days relies on word of mouth, which in part means being someone that people want to come and hang out with and play in a tournament. And that's probably the most effective way. That's even how people start to get into discords, is you meet someone at a local game store, or in another part of your social circle, and you loop them in about magic stuff going on. Between Cube and Pre-Modern, we have two kind of different strategies. Within the like Madison Cube group, we run Mondays at a store and Thursdays at typically my house, and sometimes my friend Patrick's. And once people start to come to the Monday draft that's posted on the website, it's easier and easier for people to get in the Discord, find out about the house drafts, and show up to those things.
Right, and it's
The
important
pre
there that it's half at a store, half in people's houses, or at least that there is the store component as far as like finding new people. I know that
Yeah.
like historically, at least in Madison, probably also in other places, there would be like groups of really engaged competitive players who would maybe like meet in stores, but then get to the point where they wanted to organize somewhere where they had more control of the environment, more control of who was
Mhm.
present. And, for a long time when like a lot of people were playing really competitively in Madison and drafting all the time, those drafts were all just like house games. And so it would potentially be hard for new people to find out about them and get involved. And so maintaining a presence at local game stores or somewhere discoverable is really important for being able to like find new people and grow the community. But having stuff at people's houses is also still nice for a variety of reasons.
For
And
sure.
so I definitely understand the value of that split approach, especially, while you're engaged in active community building, which it's best for the scene to always be doing that. And yeah,
There's
it's in,
there's the alternative like point that you essentially have that as your option to get new people, because the alternative is you have to be doing some of the footwork in a lot of these online spaces to find those players. And like when we started running like even when we just started playing at the cigar bar that I'm a member at, like it was a function of like me, it was just me and one friend, and we showed up and played and posted on the main pre-modern Discord and on Facebook, the pre-modern groups, and on Twitter and on Blue Sky. We literally posted everywhere, and that got us a few people slowly. But if you have some kind of like way to interface with a store while not necessarily being like tied to that store, is kind of the best way it's kind of worked for the scenes that I've helped build.
So yeah, I mean it makes a lot of sense like how the cube thing works, and also any kind of public space you can just do what you said and post, hey, we're going to be in this public space, come game with us. Whereas
Mhm.
it's harder when you're organizing a house game to be like, hey, show up at this house you've never been to.
Yeah,
I do
definitely a
have.
intimidating proposition.
Right. And I mean, I do sometimes have like strangers come over to my house to game that like get invited to a Discord and I haven't met them and we're getting together and I'm just like, yeah, here's my address, come by. But I know that that's definitely weird for some people, and I think it probably helps that like some portion of those people probably know of me even if we haven't met, and so they're like, all right, I understand something about what I'm getting myself into, versus just like, all right, I'm just going to roll up to some dude's house and see what happens.
Yeah,
Um,
and as not a known professional Magic player and now CDH expert, I don't have the benefit of I know who Sam Black is. So it's really it's very nice to have a kind of in with a store. The other option, or the other benefit of having your events. So I mentioned I do Q at my house, but we do pre-modern at Delta Beer Lab because again it's a public location that like most people are very comfortable going to a new bar much more than they are go to some
right.
guy's random house. And we'll occasionally, especially in the summer, jam pre-modern at my place, but that's mostly like the core group of folks who've regularly come out to events, and less so a formal tournament that we're hosting or a meetup.
So, do you feel? I mean, what are your thoughts on kind of like? Do you think that the cube scene would work similarly if it switched to a bar? Do you think the pre-modern scene would work differently if it switched to a game store? Do you think that like this like different strategy between these two groups is important? Do you think that like each is better served by the specific way that it's doing for some reason? If
I
so,
I
what
I
reason?
Yeah, so I definitely think that there is built-in culture with each of these communities that while there's some overlap, it's not two circles, there's a Venn diagram. And pre-modern for a very long time has roots in like the old school formats, which in Europe and this is I've not spent a lot of time playing Magic in Europe, but I've known people who've lived abroad and played Magic, and the LGS is much less centric to the Magic the Gathering experience abroad, and the like playing in other locations is more central. And so like the North American pre-modern champs has a cash bar in the Dante Alighieri Society. Like this is a like fairly like this is a built-in part of the culture that tournaments happen at bars. Additionally, it lends itself to like playing in a place other than a game store, because oftentimes we're dealing with older adults who've been playing Magic for a long time, and they like to have a beer while they play Magic. This is certainly not the case for everybody, but it's at least more common than not that the culture lends itself to that kind of environment. Cube, much more on the other hand, lends itself to like a home event, because people are more like it's eight friends coming together to hang out more than it is. And this is one of the benefits pre-modern has from an organizing perspective, is you can play PM with two people who want to go to a bar and like jam games against each other, whereas with cube, like you really need to have at least three or four people, and like, of course works best with having a full eight people at your draft, and that can create some difficulties when it comes to organizing.
Right. And another issue with Cube is, of course, that generally involves like a lot of people's hands on cards that belong to one person. And that can be something that people are a lot more comfortable with in like a home game situation with a controlled audience and stuff. I think that
And
recently.
there's norms around local game stores as well, where like people are less likely to mess around with. People are more careful with other people's stuff at a local game store,
Oh, sure, compared to trying to play at a bar or something.
so compared to playing in a
Right.
bar.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, I do think that I think KubeCon and other events kind of created a blueprint for showing, hey, actually, it is possible to like run an event where we use cubes and other people touch your cards and you don't necessarily know them and it all works out. I think
Mhm.
before that, it was a lot more unusual to say, all right, I'm just, people who I'm not close friends with are going to touch my cube. I think that
Yeah,
used to be a
it
lot more
was
rare.
very uncommon. It used to be
Yeah.
very uncommon, and we can thank a lot of the culture of that changing to like the Lucky Paper Radio folks and encouraging folks to make cube events that are open to the public and doing it consistently week over week. They laid a lot of that groundwork for much of the cube community as well. I definitely think though that a lot of what had to be like the like larger cube tournaments, a lot of that technology was not just it wasn't just like a cultural thing that it's like I don't want not people I know to touch my cube, but that how you would even like construct an event like this, like there wasn't tournament software for it before, which there now is. There weren't like processes for checking your cube in and out and checking your pools in and out. And thankfully we now live in a world where like other people have done a lot of that groundwork and these tournaments are run all around the world now.
Yeah. So that's, definitely part of kind of the changing environment around unsanctioned magic events, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, so this is a bit of a jump, but what made you decide that pre-modern would be the constructed format that you would kind of like pour all of your organizing efforts into?
Sure. So I guess first I had to like find out it was a thing. So I had a friend show me the Spike Colony podcast back when it was in like its 14th episode or something. It was at least 2 years ago. And then after playing a few games, like very, very quickly attached to like, this is the format whose gameplay is closest to like the one that I would want to play. And to clarify, by that point, I had written off constructed magic as something I ever want to deal with again. I exclusively played Cube Draft at that point, and then I realized that I couldn't show up and play pre-modern every week wherever I wanted or at a place regularly, and I couldn't have a beer if I went to a game store. So I we started our first meetup was at the cigar lounge that I'm a member at, which while a great place to hang out was not the best location for the seating was not arranged in such a way that it was very functional. We'll still hang out there, but it's not where we play our events. But uh I was very attached to having this kind of unsanctioned format in a place where like we could regularly run proxies and not worry about WPN status as well as like it has the best gameplay. So of course I wanted to that the I wanted these tournaments to exist and not enough of them existed, so I started running events.
I suppose that's pretty straightforward. um,
Yeah.
so, as far as for people in other places who are both like, I imagine that there are some people who are like, I like the idea of this happening, but either, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like, yeah, it'd be cool if someone did this, but I don't want to be the person to do this. I don't have the
Yeah,
bandwidth or whatever.
everyone
That's
wants the option to show up to the event, but
right.
it certainly takes
Um,
some legwork.
but for people who are open to putting more work into it, but like worried about is that going to work out? What would you say? Do you have any thoughts on identifying an opportunity and like figuring out whether whether something's likely to fly in a place? Like how do you figure out like is there enough interest here? Can I get people to come to this? Is that
Sure.
something you
So
just like do it and see what happens?
yeah, sorry, one sec. So the floor for this not working out is you and a couple of friends regularly play Magic together at the same time every week. And so like the stakes aren't like high to the extent of like it not working out is still pretty great. And so like I think that to try to avoid dissuading people, like you don't need to run a 32 person monthly event every month off the get-go. Like start with the same time and place every week that you like hang out with some people you know and play the format you want to play at the same time each week. And
Right.
using that because again you don't want to like don't buy a stream setup if you've never run a tournament before. Like just start with the minimum like kind of baseline of like I have 3 friends of mine and we like to play CEDH, or I have 6 friends of mine and we have 2 cubes. We're going to show up at this place every week and do this thing. And if you can find a Discord or other kind of forum where some people are who might live in your city, just post that you're doing it there and expect no one new to show up for a while and
Right.
keep regularly posting.
So the
That
key here is basically take what would be a house game, go
Mhm.
to any public location that you would enjoy being at, and post online wherever on whatever platforms you use or are interested in posting, and say you'll be there and make it regular,
And make it
and
regular. The
then let it grow
consistency
from
is the
there.
most important thing because eventually you will get one additional person and that person might know 2 other people. And like I said earlier in the pod, word of mouth is like the most effective way that you can get people to show up places. Also, if you are thinking about this, you most likely have at least one person who enjoys this. Like personally invite people you know to come hang out with you. I know that Magic players can be a little bit like socially awkward sometimes, but we all want to play Magic, and so like the biggest thing is that the ceiling is you get 16 people every week for the format you really like to play, and the floor is you're still hanging out regularly every week with people you like playing the format that you like. It's don't get intimidated by like it not working. The fail case is still a success.
Right. So I've heard other people talk about like, oh, we'd like to organize a tournament, but we don't have space in our house to do that. It seems like a pretty like risky investment to like rent a ballroom if we're kind of like new organizers, like where and how do we do this? And you have kind of solved that in a way that didn't cost you any money, as I understand it, right? You just worked
Yes,
out. So,
it
um,
is free.
right. So, and it makes sense to me that, in at least some places, there'd be businesses that, have space or space at certain times. And, like obviously, businesses like bars that want people to come in to be there and buy stuff from them are like, okay, so you're saying that you're asking us if you can have people show up at our bar? Yes, that's what the bar is here for. Please do that.
Yeah,
But
correct.
I think for people, I think most of us haven't planned an event at a bar or like figured out who in a bar to talk to ask if that's something the bar would be cool with. What was your process for like figuring out like, oh, here's how to have this conversation, here's who to talk to, here's how to choose a bar that's going to work well for this or be cool with this. For people who like the idea but haven't done it, what does that look like?
Yeah. So there's a few things to keep in mind before you like have any conversations with anybody, and that's is the venue I'm going to be asking a good fit to have Magic players here? I was talking about the cigar bar earlier, and like they have a circle table that can comfortably fit 6 people and 2 matches of Magic at it. Not a place that you want a tournament. Breweries are really, really great for this because the tables are lengthy, and so you don't want to like set the bar up to tell you no because it sounds like a bad idea. But if you've identified a location, bars are not like large monolithic corporations. Typically, the bartender has a boss who knows the owner. Um, and so you can often And especially picking a place where you've hung out a few times, or or even you're a regular at. Just talk to the bartender or the person you interface with when you go to this place, and simply ask, I would like to potentially run an event at this place. Who should I talk to about arranging this? And oftentimes they will just hand you a business card and you can arrange everything. One thing you want to emphasize in some of these conversations is like making it very easy to have them have you back, not requesting like large complicated setups, and being willing to do things yourself, and emphasize that this is the number of people that will have purchasing the kind of thing that place sells. Additionally, because you noted that some parts of the country may not have bars like this, oftentimes universities or other kinds of like nonprofit organizations have spaces that, while not free, much more affordable compared to like a wedding venue, a venue that typically hosts weddings, where for a couple $100 you can rent out the space and you can include that in kind of an event fee. That said, I would highly recommend against doing that until you've built up this weekly scene. And the same goes for like running any kind of big event. Like, just talk to the bar and ask, can we have like 8 seats, like a rectangle table with 8 seats, because I think we're going to have 6 or 7 people show up for this event. Don't kind of jump the gun and try and run something too much, because again, you want to start building that relationship and having them want to keep having you back.
Yeah. So basically, ask whoever's there for information on someone other than them to talk to. Don't assume that the bartender is the person you're trying to negotiate with.
Correct.
And try to start small and build a relationship with them before trying to, ask for like a lot of tables out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a really big ask to like reserve half of a location, and I or even the whole space. I remember when we first tried to do BarCube at CubeCon, also at Delta, and they were worried we weren't going to fill the 40 seats that we had reserved, and we filled up the whole bar in the first night. But that's certainly atypical. It's easier to say, "Hey, can I have 8 seats?" and then consistently be hitting 10 people showing up week over week before asking for more room, especially if it costs some kind of fee. Now, here in the Midwest, they're more than happy for us to just bring in a lot of business, but in other
Right. Your
parts of the
mileage may
country, you may
vary
have some
depending
kind of
on.
yeah. If you're in New York City, I don't think this strategy is probably going to work for you.
Sure. And, if you're somewhere in between, obviously, I assume you're going to do well to pay attention to how crowded the establishment you're trying to use is. And, I imagine they're going to be more interested if you schedule for like off peak times for them.
Yeah, that's another really good call out, Sam. Tuesday night is a much easier sell at a bar than Friday night. They have a lot of regular foot traffic like at those times. So hang out there during off-peak hours and see what works for even when you're discussing with the event manager, or even the owner of the bar, what nights are you slow, so that you can bring in business for them and have a potentially very affordable space.
Yeah. And another thing that's probably worth mentioning, if you're going to be trying to build a, scene in a constructed format, is it probably helps to just anytime you're going somewhere to have a lot of extra decks on you, right?
100%. So, and especially the other benefit of you doing this at a bar and not at a local game store, or using a like app like Companion to run a sanctioned event, is playtest cards are not only okay, but sometimes preferable, because some people don't want to bring their Mox Diamond to the bar. So using a service like MPC to make a bunch of proxy decks and just have them available for people to play with is something that's highly recommended, what regardless of which format you're running. You can print whole proxy cubes and run those at bars instead of or other locations, rather than trying to bring your fully not fully like legit vintage cube to a bar.
Right.
I'd even be nervous about that, and I own one.
A cube, not a bar.
Yes, that's correct. If I owned a bar, this would be much easier.
Yeah. So I think I'm at a time when I need to be winding down. Do you have anything that you think is important to add, either for other people to know or just something that you want to tell people about? Any upcoming events people should know about?
Yeah, so first, if anyone would like to contact me, I have an event partner that does most of the posting on social media, but you can still find me at Island Ponder on Discord. And I'm happy to answer any questions about event organizing or about PM or
And to
cube.
clarify, that's Island Ponder, one word, no punctuation, no
All
characters,
lowercase, no
no
characters,
characters
no
between the D and the
punctuation.
P.
Correct. Additionally, I'm working on a couple of different projects to get my calendar of events that I run out in some more usual form. But you can find that at cubedungeon.com as well. I think the biggest thing that I would note, though, from an event organizing perspective, is don't spend money you are worried you will not make back on things you don't know you need yet. You want to treat this with, how can I spend as little money as possible to start building a scene, rather than you're picking up a new hobby and you need to buy a bunch of new supplies. Magic cards are already expensive, and you don't need a stream setup after 3 meetups. And I also want to encourage people to run more events, because that's how players get to play some of these odd formats that aren't going to be supported by Wizards of the Coast. So
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Pleasure talking as always.
thanks for having me, Sam.
And for the listeners, I hope that this inspires you to try out uh, building a scene if that's something you're interested in doing. So I'm just going to close out by, as always, I want to say a little bit about the dinner I'm making this week. However, I'm recording this earlier in the week due to times that worked for Noah. So I haven't worked out my exact menu. I know that I'm making risotto. I know that I'm going to make multiple risottos. I know that one of them will be lemon forward. This is request of a friend whose birthday was in the last week. When my regular guests have birthdays and choose to, I like to let them request a meal. So there was a request for risotto with a note that he'd previously really enjoyed a lemon risotto. So I'm going to do some kind of lemon forward risotto. And I'm thinking about incorporating fennel into at least one of the risottos. I think that sounds pretty good. And I haven't decided if I want to serve this with probably a salad, maybe roasted vegetables, unlikely, but possibly both. So details uncertain. That's roughly what I'm going to be making. And of course, the details and recipes will be posted on the Patreon. So thank you for listening. If you are looking to support the podcast, get in on the recipes and other bonus written content and stuff like that, be sure to check out Sam's Table. Sorry, patreon.com/Sam's Table Podcast. That's it for now. I'll be back next week. Bye.